The massive space station hung in orbit above Nexus Prime like a glittering crown of metal and light. Ships from dozens of different worlds docked at its many ports, each one bringing delegates to the most important gathering in the galaxy. The Galactic Council was meeting to decide if humans deserved a place among the stars. Marcus Chen stood at the observation deck, watching the traffic flow around the station. He looked like any middle-aged man from Earth. Gray hair touched his temples and small lines marked the corners of his eyes. His diplomatic uniform was neat and clean, but nothing special. When other aliens looked at him, they saw exactly what they expected to see from humans: soft, weak, and harmless. Behind him, other delegates moved through the corridors. The Korthax walked on 6 legs, their blue skin gleaming under the artificial lights. The Zilani floated in their environmental suits, tentacles waving as they communicated through color changes. The Vrex stood tallest of all, their insect-like bodies covered in natural armor that could stop most weapons. Chen turned from the window and walked toward the main council chamber. Other beings stepped aside as he passed, but not out of respect. They moved because they found humans strange and a little disgusting. Most species in the galaxy had evolved past the need for such primitive forms. Hair, soft skin, and warm blood seemed crude to them. "Ambassador Chen," a voice called behind him. Chen turned to see Diplomat Zelkar of the Korthax approaching. The blue-skinned alien's forearms gestured in what Chen had learned was a greeting. "How are you finding the station?" "Very impressive," Chen replied with a warm smile. "Your people built something amazing here." Zelkar's head tilted. The Korthax had been part of the council for 3,000 years. They remembered when the Vrex were still fighting with stone weapons. They had watched civilizations rise and fall. To them, humans were infants who had barely learned to walk among the stars. "Tell me," Zelkar said, "what does your species hope to gain from membership?" Chen's answer came smoothly, like he had practiced it many times. "We want to learn. Humans have much to offer, but we know we have more to gain. Trade, knowledge, friendship. These things make the galaxy better for everyone." The Korthax diplomat nodded politely, but Chen could see the dismissal in his large eyes. Another primitive species seeking protection from their betters. Another child race looking for adults to take care of them. "Of course," Zelkar said. "We look forward to hearing your presentation." Chen thanked him and continued toward the chamber. He passed more delegates, each one representing civilizations older than human recorded history. The Moralian collective consciousness had been exploring space when Earth was still covered in ice. The crystalline Nethri had built their first starships before humans discovered fire. Inside the council chamber, hundreds of beings took their places. The room was designed to accommodate every type of life the galaxy had produced. Atmospheric fields kept different species comfortable in their preferred environments. Translation systems turned every word into something each being could understand. Chen found his assigned seat near the back. It was not an insult exactly, but it showed where humans ranked in the galactic order. New applicants always sat in the rear until they proved themselves worthy of better positions. A few rows ahead, the Vrex delegation took their places with military precision. Their leader, Warcast Thakmor, stood nearly 8 feet tall. His natural armor gleamed black and silver, and his forearms moved with the controlled grace of a trained killer. When he turned to look back at the human section, his compound eyes reflected the chamber lights like dark mirrors. "So that is the human," Thakmor said to his aide, loud enough for Chen to hear. "I expected something more impressive." The aide, a smaller Vrex warrior, clicked his mandibles in agreement. "They say humans conquered their entire world. Looking at him, I find that hard to believe." Thakmor's laugh sounded like grinding metal. "Perhaps they conquered it with words and treaties. I have heard they prefer talking to fighting." Chen continued reading his notes, but his enhanced hearing caught every word. The Vrex spoke in their own language, probably thinking the translation systems were not active yet. They did not know that Chen understood their speech perfectly. The chamber fell silent as the council chairman entered. Elder Voss was ancient even by galactic standards. His species, the Eternal Minds, had given up physical bodies millions of years ago. Now he existed as pure thought contained in a crystalline housing that floated above the assembly. "We gather today to consider the application of the species called humans," Voss announced, his mental voice reaching every being present. "They seek membership in our council and acceptance into the galactic community." Chen stood when his name was called. He walked to the center of the chamber, feeling hundreds of alien eyes watching his every step. The spotlight found him, and he looked small and ordinary under its harsh glare. "Honored delegates," Chen began, his voice carrying clearly through the translation system. "I am Marcus Chen, speaking for all of humanity. We come before you not as conquerors or supplicants, but as neighbors seeking to join the community of civilized worlds." He spoke for 20 minutes about human achievements, their rapid technological development, and their desire for peaceful cooperation. His words were carefully chosen, respectful but confident. He painted a picture of humanity as eager students ready to learn from their elders. Most of the delegates listened politely. A few even seemed genuinely interested. The humans had developed some impressive technology in their short time among the stars. Their faster-than-light drives were surprisingly efficient, and their artificial intelligence systems showed real innovation. But Chen could see the underlying attitude in their faces and body language. Cute, promising, perhaps even useful in time. But still children playing with adult tools. Thakmor made no effort to hide his contempt. The Vrex warrior shifted in his seat, his armor plates clicking together in irritation. When Chen finished his presentation, Thakmor stood without waiting to be recognized. "A pretty speech," the Vrex said, his voice cutting through the chamber like a blade. "But words are wind. What has this species actually accomplished? They have been in space for less than 2 centuries. They have colonized a few dozen worlds. They have fought no real wars, faced no true challenges." Chen remained calm, his hands clasped behind his back. "Honored Warcast, humanity believes that avoiding conflict through diplomacy is preferable to seeking it through violence." Thakmor's mandibles spread in what Chen recognized as a Vrex expression of disdain. "Spoken like a species that has never faced real danger. When the darkness comes for you, small human, your words will not save you." "Perhaps not," Chen agreed mildly. "But words have served us well so far." The Vrex warrior snorted and sat back down, dismissing the human with a gesture. Around the chamber, other delegates murmured among themselves. The exchange had confirmed what most of them already believed. Humans were peaceful by nature, possibly even weak. They might make useful junior partners in time, but they would need protection and guidance. Chen returned to his seat, still wearing the same gentle smile he had maintained throughout the session. He had played his part perfectly. Every word, every gesture had been calculated to produce exactly this response. As the session adjourned, he gathered his papers and prepared for the informal meetings that would follow. This was where the real work happened. In quiet conversations away from the formal chamber, he had many more beings to meet, many more minds to put at ease. None of them suspected that Marcus Chen was anything more than what he appeared to be. They saw a middle-aged diplomat with soft eyes and careful words. They had no idea they were looking at something the galaxy had never seen before. Death in a diplomatic suit. The diplomatic reception was exactly what Chen had expected. Dozens of species mingled in the station's grand ballroom, each group keeping mostly to themselves. The atmosphere processors worked overtime to maintain comfortable conditions for everyone, creating small pockets of different air mixtures throughout the space. Chen moved through the crowd with practiced ease. He had spent 3 days learning the social customs of every species present. A slight bow for the Korthax, careful eye contact with the Moralians, and respectful distance from the territorial sectar. Each interaction was brief but positive. He was building relationships, one careful conversation at a time. Ambassador Chen, elder diplomat Travash of the Moralians, approached him near the refreshment stations. Her silver skin shimmered under the lights, and her large black eyes reflected genuine curiosity. "I found your presentation quite interesting today." "Thank you, elder diplomat. I hope it conveyed humanity's sincere desire to contribute to the galactic community." Travash nodded slowly. The Moralians were one of the oldest species in the Council, known for their careful consideration of every decision. "Your species shows promise, but there are concerns about your inexperience with the realities of galactic politics." Chen sipped his water, buying himself a moment to consider his response. "We understand that we have much to learn. That is precisely why we seek membership. Wisdom shared is wisdom multiplied." "Well said," Travash replied, "but wisdom must sometimes be paid for in blood. The galaxy is not always a peaceful place." Before Chen could respond, a commotion near the main entrance drew their attention. The Vrex delegation had arrived in full ceremonial armor. Takamor led them into the room like a general reviewing troops. Other delegates moved aside automatically, giving the warriors the space their aggressive presence demanded. Chen excused himself from Travash and moved toward a quieter section of the ballroom. He had expected this. The Vrex would need to be handled carefully. Their warrior culture demanded respect through strength, but showing strength too early would undermine his diplomatic mission. The evening progressed smoothly until the reception officially ended. Chen waited until most delegates had returned to their quarters before making his way through the station's corridors. He had memorized the layout during his first day aboard, noting security positions, emergency exits, and maintenance passages out of habit. The maintenance corridor on Deck 7 was poorly lit and rarely used. Chen walked through it on his way back to the human quarters, his footsteps echoing softly off the metal walls. The soft hum of the station's systems provided background noise that would mask other sounds. He was halfway through the corridor when he heard them approaching. 4 sets of footsteps moving with military precision. Chen did not change his pace or look back. His enhanced hearing told him everything he needed to know about the approaching Vrex. Human. Thakmor's voice echoed off the walls. Stop. Chen paused and turned slowly, his expression calm and curious. Warcast Thakmor, I hope you enjoyed the reception. The Vrex warrior stood at the far end of the corridor with 3 of his subordinates. In the dim lighting, their black armor made them look like shadows given form. Thakmor's compound eyes reflected the few working lights like dark stars. You spoke well today, Thakmor said, stepping closer. Pretty words about peace and cooperation. But words are for the weak, human. In the real galaxy, strength is the only truth that matters. Chen clasped his hands behind his back, the same pose he had used during his presentation. I respect your perspective, Warcast. The Vrex have a proud warrior tradition. Proud, yes, but also practical. Thakmor moved within arm's reach, using his height advantage to loom over the human. Your species seeks protection from stronger powers. You offer trade and knowledge because you have nothing else to give. Perhaps, Chen said mildly. But surely there is value in diversity of approach. Thakmor's mandibles clicked in amusement. Diversity is weakness. The strong survive, the weak serve or die. This is the law of nature. Chen nodded as if considering this wisdom. And which category do you believe humans fall into? The Vrex warrior's laugh was harsh and metallic. Is that even a question? Look at you, small human. Soft flesh, dull teeth, weak limbs. Your species conquered your world through numbers and tools, not strength. Tools can be quite effective, Chen observed. Against other weaklings, perhaps. But what happens when you face a real predator? Takamor leaned closer, his breath hot against Chen's face. What happens when words and treaties fail? Chen's expression did not change. I suppose we would adapt, would you? Takamor's voice dropped to a threatening whisper. Let me show you what happens to the weak in the real galaxy. The blow came fast and hard. Thakmor's chitin-covered backhand swept toward Chen's head with enough force to shatter bone. It was not quite an attack meant to kill, but it would certainly send a message about the proper order of things. Chen did not move to avoid it. The impact caught him across the left cheek with a sound like breaking stone. His head turned slightly with the force, but his feet remained planted. A thin line of blue blood appeared on his skin, not his own, but from Thakmor's fractured chitin. The corridor fell silent except for the station's mechanical humming. Chen slowly turned his head back to face the Vrex warrior, his expression unchanged. The alien blood on his cheek looked almost decorative in the dim light. Thakmor stared at his own hand. Cracks ran through the chitin where it had struck the human's face. The smaller Vrex warriors shifted nervously behind their leader, suddenly uncertain. Interesting, Chen said in the same mild tone he had used all evening. Would you mind doing that again? The question hung in the air like a physical presence. Thakmor's compound eyes fixed on the human's face, searching for signs of fear, pain, or anger. He found none. Chen looked at him with the same polite attention he might give to a fellow diplomat discussing trade agreements. What are you? Thakmor whispered. Chen wiped the blue blood from his cheek with one finger, examining it with scientific curiosity. A diplomat, as I mentioned, though I should clarify something about my background. He looked up at the Vrex warriors, and for just a moment something flickered behind his eyes, something old and dark and patient. Before I became a diplomat, I served in the Terran Defense Corps, Special Operations Division. We had a war, you see. It lasted 37 years. Chen's voice remained conversational, but the temperature in the corridor seemed to drop several degrees. Perhaps you have heard of our opponents. They called themselves the Devourers. Fascinating species, really. They had consumed 17 civilizations before they reached human space. The galactic community had written us off as another inevitable loss. Dockmore took an involuntary step backward. His warriors moved with him, suddenly eager for more distance from the small human. The war ended 12 years ago. Chen continued, straightening his diplomatic jacket. I retired and took up diplomacy. Much more peaceful work. I do hope you understand. The Vrex warriors looked at each other, then back at Chen. In the poor lighting of the maintenance corridor, the human diplomat no longer looked soft or harmless. He looked like exactly what he had just claimed to be, a veteran of humanity's first real war. Now then, Chen said, checking his watch, I should return to my quarters. Tomorrow's sessions begin early, and I want to be well rested for the negotiations. He walked past the Vrex warriors who pressed themselves against the corridor walls to give him room. None of them moved to stop him. As Chen disappeared around the corner, Dockmore looked down at his fractured chitin and realized he had made a terrible mistake. The soft flesh human was not weak at all. News traveled fast aboard the diplomatic station. By morning, every delegation had heard whispers about the encounter in the maintenance corridor. The details varied depending on who told the story, but certain facts remained consistent. The human diplomat had been confronted by Vrex warriors. Something had happened. The Vrex were unusually quiet. Elder diplomat Travash was among the first to take action. The Moralians had not survived for 50,000 years by ignoring potential threats. If there was more to humanity than their peaceful presentation suggested, the Council needed to know. She activated her private communication array and sent a priority request to the Moralian intelligence networks. Every species maintained some form of information gathering, but the Moralians had turned it into an art form. If there were secrets about humanity's past, they would find them. The response came back within hours, and it made Travash's silver skin flush pale with shock. Across the station, similar scenes played out in delegation quarters throughout the diplomatic levels. The Korthax consulted their extensive historical databases. The crystalline Nethri reached out through their quantum communication networks. Even the proud Sectar activated intelligence assets they rarely used. What they found changed everything. The first reports focused on a conflict the galactic community had barely noticed. 37 years ago, signals from human space had simply stopped. Long-range sensors detected massive energy signatures and signs of widespread destruction. The assumption had been simple. Another young species had encountered something beyond their ability to handle. The galaxy was familiar with such tragedies. Space was vast and dangerous. New civilizations regularly discovered threats they could not overcome. Pirates, rogue artificial intelligences, natural disasters, or predator species. The list of potential extinction events was endless. But as the intelligence reports came in, a different picture emerged. The Devourers had been a known threat for over 2 million years. They appeared at the edge of the galaxy in vast hive fleets, consuming everything in their path. 17 previous civilizations had fallen to them, each one adding to the Devourers' knowledge and strength. When they reached human space, the galactic powers had observed from a safe distance. Some had even prepared to study whatever remained after the consumption was complete. The Devourers always left interesting technological remnants behind. The war that followed defied every expectation. Humanity did not simply resist, they counterattacked. Their ships, primitive by galactic standards, proved surprisingly effective against Devourer biotechnology. Human tactics, considered crude and brutal by civilized species, turned out to be exactly what was needed against an enemy that knew no mercy. The conflict lasted 4 decades and covered dozens of star systems. The Devourers, accustomed to quick victories against civilizations that valued preservation over destruction, found themselves fighting an enemy that seemed to relish the challenge. Humans fought in ways that horrified other species. They used planets as weapons, turning entire worlds into kinetic projectiles. They deployed biological weapons that made the Devourers' own viruses look benign. They fought in the vacuum of space without environmental suits, using genetic modifications that transformed their bodies into living weapons. Most disturbing of all, they seemed to enjoy it. Battle reports, when they could be decoded, revealed tactics that bordered on the insane. Human soldiers would board Devourer hive ships with nothing but improvised explosives and melee weapons. Entire fleets would sacrifice themselves to destroy single enemy vessels, counting it a victory if the exchange rate favored humanity. The war ended not with human defeat, but with the complete extinction of a species that had survived for millions of years. In his quarters, Zelkar of the Korthax read through the intelligence summary with growing unease. The four-armed diplomat had participated in galactic politics for 3 centuries, but nothing in his experience had prepared him for this revelation. The humans had not simply won their war, they had made their enemies extinct. Not driven off, not defeated, but eliminated so completely that no trace of devourer biology remained anywhere in known space. The report included fragments of human military communications from the final battle. They had been translated from something called Reaper Division frequencies, apparently a specialized unit within human forces. Target acquired. Hive ship designation Omega-7. Copy that, Reaper 6, going dark for infiltration. Reaper 6, this is command. Ship is confirmed populated with 3 million Devourer entities. Understood, command. Send the bill to hell. The communication ended there. Satellite observations showed the massive hive ship exploding from within 30 minutes later. Zelkar set down the report and considered its implications. 3 million entities destroyed by what appeared to be a single human operative. The math was almost incomprehensible. Similar revelations were spreading through every delegation aboard the station. The Vrex military attachés were particularly shaken as they reviewed tactical analyses of human combat methods. Warcast Thakmor sat in his quarters, staring at a holographic display showing human battle formations. His compound eyes tracked the movements of human forces as they systematically dismantled Devourer fleets that should have been invincible. The humans fought like Vrex warriors, but worse. They showed the same disregard for personal safety, the same willingness to die for victory, but they combined it with a calculating intelligence that made them infinitely more dangerous. A particular battle caught his attention. The defense of colony world Terra Nova had involved 17 human ships against a Devourer fleet of over 200 vessels. Standard military doctrine would have called for immediate evacuation. Instead, the humans had won. The tactical breakdown showed how they had done it. Coordinated ramming attacks, suicide bombers, and something the report called berserker protocols. Humans who had undergone surgical modifications to become living weapons. One notation particularly disturbed him. Reaper Division assets deployed at 13:47 hours. Enemy resistance ceased at 14:23 hours. Devourer casualties total. Human casualties classified. 36 minutes to eliminate an entire invasion fleet. As the intelligence report circulated, the mood aboard the diplomatic station changed dramatically. Conversations became quieter, more careful. Delegates who had been dismissive of humanity's application began reconsidering their positions. The peaceful, diplomatic humans were not what they appeared to be. Elder Diplomat Travash called an emergency session with the senior council members. Representatives from the major powers gathered in a secure conference room, their faces grim as they reviewed the accumulated intelligence. The question before us, Travash began, is no longer whether humanity deserves membership in the council. The question is whether we can afford to deny it to them. The Nethri representative, a crystalline being whose thoughts moved at quantum speeds, spoke first. The data suggests humanity represents a significant military threat. Their tactical capabilities exceed anything in our current databases. More than that, added the Sectar delegate, his reptilian features tight with concern. They appear to have completely adapted to total warfare. Most species retain some concept of proportional response. Humans seem to have discarded such limitations entirely. Zelkar gestured with 2 of his arms, a sign of deep consideration among the Korthax. We must also consider their apparent restraint. They have not used these capabilities against any other species since the Devourer War ended. Ambassador Chen's presentation showed no hint of aggression, which may be the most disturbing aspect of all, Travash replied. A species that can choose when to be peaceful is far more dangerous than one that is simply violent by nature. The discussion continued for hours, but the conclusion was inevitable. The galaxy had been looking at humanity backwards. They were not children seeking protection from adults. They were apex predators who had chosen to practice diplomacy, and tomorrow, they would all have to sit across a negotiating table from Ambassador Marcus Chen, knowing that his mild demeanor concealed something the galaxy had never encountered before, a species that had made extinction into an art form. The challenge came at dawn, delivered through official diplomatic channels with all the ceremony Vrex tradition demanded. Warcast Thakmor had spent the night in ritual preparation, his honor guard applying ceremonial paint to his armor and sharpening his war blades to molecular edges. Ambassador Chen received the formal declaration while eating breakfast in the human quarters. He read it twice, set it aside, and finished his coffee before responding. "Please inform Warcast Thakmor that I accept his challenge," Chen told the Vrex messenger. "Standard Vrex combat protocols are acceptable to me." The messenger, a young warrior barely past his molting ceremony, stared at the human diplomat. He had expected protests, demands for council intervention, perhaps even an attempt to flee the station. The calm acceptance was completely outside his understanding. "You accept?" the young Vrex stammered. "Of course," Chen replied, straightening his tie. "In Vrex culture, to refuse a blood hunt is to accept dishonor. I would not want to insult your traditions." Within hours, word of the challenge had spread throughout the station. Emergency protocols were activated, sealing off the hydroponics bay where the combat would take place. Council security established a monitoring perimeter, and medical teams prepared for casualties. The various delegations gathered in the observation galleries surrounding the bay. Some came out of curiosity, others from diplomatic necessity. All of them had read the intelligence reports about humanity's military capabilities. They wanted to see if the peaceful Ambassador Chen matched the descriptions of human warriors from the Devourer War. The hydroponics bay was a vast chamber designed to feed the station's population. Artificial environments from dozens of worlds created a complex landscape of different terrains, atmospheric conditions, and gravitational fields. Trees from the Moralian homeworld grew beside crystalline formations from Nethri space. Swamps from the Korthax colonies bordered desert terrain that mimicked the Sectar environment. It was perfect for combat between species with different environmental preferences. Thakmor entered first, his ceremonial armor gleaming under the artificial suns. He carried traditional Vrex warblades, monomolecular edges that could cut through most known materials, bio-enhanced muscles and reflexes, honed through decades of training, made him a perfect killing machine by the standards of most galactic species. His honor guard chanted war songs as he took his position at the chamber's center. The ritual words spoke of glorious death, of honor paid in blood, of enemies crushed beneath superior might. It was an ancient ceremony, unchanged since the Vrex had first left their homeworld. Chen entered from the opposite end of the chamber. He wore his standard diplomatic suit, dark blue with the simple insignia of Earth's diplomatic corps. He carried nothing but a small briefcase, the same one he had brought to every council session. The contrast was absurd. A trained warrior in full battle armor facing a middle-aged diplomat in business attire. Several delegates in the observation galleries murmured among themselves, wondering if the human truly understood what he had agreed to. "This is your last chance to withdraw," Thakmor called across the chamber. "I do not wish to kill you, human, but Vrex honor demands satisfaction." Chen set down his briefcase and rolled up his sleeves. "I appreciate your concern, Warcast, but I think you will find that human honor has its own demands." Elder Voss, the council chairman, activated the chamber's communication system. His mental voice reached every being present. "By ancient rite and council tradition, this combat is sanctioned. Let it be recorded that both parties enter freely, with full knowledge of the consequences." The starting signal echoed through the chamber, a harmonic tone that resonated across multiple frequency ranges to accommodate different species' hearing. Thakmor immediately charged toward the human's position, his war blades reflecting the artificial sunlight. Chen disappeared. One moment he was standing in the open. The next he had melted into the complex terrain of the hydroponics bay. Thakmor's charge carried him through the space where the human had been, his blades cutting only air. The Vrex warrior spun around, his compound eyes scanning the artificial landscape. His enhanced hearing detected movement, but it seemed to come from everywhere at once. Leaves rustled in the Moralian section, water splashed in the Korthax swamps, and sand shifted in the Sectar desert. But no clear target presented itself. Where are you, human? Thakmor called out. Face me with honor. Chen's voice came from somewhere in the canopy above. I am here, Warcast. But perhaps you should consider the nature of honor. A small object fell from the trees and landed at Thakmor's feet. It was a piece of chitin, part of the armor plating from his left shoulder. The Vrex warrior looked down at it in confusion, then checked his armor. A perfectly circular hole had been cut through the shoulder guard, so precise that he had not even felt it. How did you? Thakmor began. Something struck his right knee with surgical precision. Not enough force to cripple, but enough to make him stumble. As he regained his balance, he felt a light touch on his back. When he spun around, another piece of his armor fell to the ground. Chen emerged from behind a crystalline formation 20 feet away, brushing dust from his jacket. Vrex armor is impressive, but it has 17 critical weak points. I have just demonstrated 3 of them. Thakmor raised his warblades and activated his bio-enhanced speed. He crossed the distance in less than a second, his weapons moving in a pattern that should have carved the human into pieces. Chen was not there when the blades arrived. The human had moved with impossible fluidity, his body seeming to bend around the attack. One hand touched Thakmor's wrist as he passed, and the Vrex warrior felt his grip on the right blade weaken. By the time he completed his attack sequence, the weapon was gone. Chen stood 10 feet away, examining the warblade with professional interest. Monomolecular edge, biometallic construction, neural interface for enhanced control. Very sophisticated. He tossed the blade aside with casual disregard. It embedded itself in a nearby tree trunk, vibrating from the impact. Thakmor stared at his empty hand, then at the human. What are you? I told you yesterday, Chen replied, loosening his tie. Former military. Special Operations Division. The Vrex warrior attacked again, this time with his remaining blade and natural weapons. His free hand, tipped with razor-sharp chitin, swept toward Chen's throat while his legs kicked out in a complex pattern designed to overwhelm any defense. Chen moved through the assault like water flowing around stones. Every strike missed by the smallest possible margin, and each dodge brought him closer to his opponent. When Thakmor overextended on a particularly aggressive combination, Chen's hand touched the warrior's chest. Thakmor froze. He could feel something pressed against his armor, directly over his primary heart. Looking down, he saw that Chen had removed a small device from his briefcase, a cylindrical object no larger than a writing instrument. Molecular disruptor, Chen explained conversationally. Terran military issue. It will create a hole approximately 6 inches in diameter through anything within 12 inches of the emitter, including your armor, your rib cage, and most of your internal organs. The observation galleries had fallen completely silent. Every delegate watched the tableau in the hydroponics bay, hardly daring to breathe. The interesting thing about human warfare, Chen continued, is that we learn to treat every problem as an engineering challenge. Superior armor, design better weapons. Faster reflexes, develop better tactics. Stronger opponents, find their weak points. He stepped back, lowering the device. Thakmor remained frozen, his compound eyes fixed on the small weapon. The Devourers were stronger than us, faster than us, and more numerous than us. They had superior technology and millions of years of experience. So we changed the rules. Chen walked over to where Thakmor's first blade was embedded in the tree. He pulled it free and examined the edge. We stopped fighting their kind of war and started fighting our kind instead. The war blade shattered in his grip, the molecular bonds disrupted by pressure applied at precisely the right angles. Metal fragments fell to the ground like silver snow. The Vrex honor code demands personal combat with traditional weapons, Chen observed. But human warfare is about winning, not following rules. He turned back to face the Vrex warrior, and for the first time since entering the chamber, his expression changed. The diplomatic mask slipped, revealing something ancient and patient and utterly merciless. However, Chen said, his voice still calm and conversational, I respect your courage in issuing this challenge. You deserve to understand what you faced. He walked to where Thakmor stood paralyzed and began pointing to locations on the warrior's armor. Arterial pressure point here, spinal nerve cluster here, joint weakness here. I could have ended this combat in 17 different ways within the first 30 seconds. Chen's finger traced a path along Thakmor's throat, but that would have been execution, not combat. So instead, I chose to demonstrate. He stepped back and straightened his tie. The challenge is complete, Warcast. Your honor is satisfied, And you have learned something about humanity that your intelligence reports could not teach you. Thakmor found his voice, though it came out as barely a whisper. What did I learn? The medical bay was quiet except for the soft hum of healing equipment. Thakmor lay on a treatment table designed for Vrek's physiology, his armor removed to allow the medical scanners to work. The damage was minimal, a few bruised joints, some strained muscles, and his pride. Chen sat beside the table, having insisted on personally tending to the Vrek's warrior's injuries. His diplomatic jacket hung neatly on a nearby chair, and his sleeves were rolled up as he worked with practiced efficiency. The joint will be tender for a few days, Chen explained, applying a healing gel to Thakmor's knee. I was careful not to cause permanent damage, but Vrek's physiology is different enough from human that I had to estimate the pressure. Thakmor watched the human work with something approaching awe. These same hands had dismantled him in combat with surgical precision, and now they moved with equal skill to repair the damage they had caused. You could have killed me, the Vrek's warrior said quietly. Yes, Chen agreed without hesitation. 43 different ways, actually. I counted as we fought. Why did you not? Chen paused in his work and looked directly into Thakmor's compound eyes. Because killing you would have solved nothing. Your challenge was about honor, not survival. You deserve to learn the truth about humanity, not die in ignorance. The Vrek's warrior was silent for a long moment. In his culture, defeat in single combat usually meant death or exile. The concept of an enemy who chose mercy was almost incomprehensible. What are you really? Thakmor asked. Chen resumed working on the injured knee. I am exactly what I said I was. A diplomat. A former soldier. A human being who prefers talking to fighting. But the things you did in the combat chamber, no, are part of who I am, just as your warrior training is part of who you are. Chen sealed the healing gel with a small medical device. The difference is that humans learn to turn warfare into a science rather than an art. He helped Thakmor sit up on the treatment table. Your people fight with honor and tradition. Ours learn to fight for results. Both approaches have their merits. Outside the medical bay, the station buzzed with activity. The combat had been recorded from dozens of angles, and the footage was being analyzed by military experts from every major species. What they saw defied their understanding of personal combat. In the council chambers, an emergency session was in progress. Every major delegation had sent their senior representatives, and the debate had been ongoing for hours. The human demonstrated capabilities beyond anything in our databases, declared the Nethri representative, her crystalline form pulsing with agitated energy. His movement patterns suggest enhanced reflexes, possibly genetic modification. Elder Diplomat Travash gestured for attention. Our analysis indicates otherwise. Sensor scans show Ambassador Chen is genetically baseline human. His capabilities appear to be the result of training and experience alone. The implications of that statement sent a ripple of unease through the assembly. If Chen was an ordinary human, what did that suggest about the species as a whole? Zelkar of the Korthax accessed his delegation's military files. Our tactical analysis suggests the ambassador was deliberately restraining himself throughout the combat. The techniques he demonstrated could have been lethal if applied with full force. That, said Elder Voss, the council chairman, may be the most significant aspect of what we witnessed. A species that can choose the level of violence they apply is far more dangerous than one that simply knows how to fight. The debate continued, but the outcome was becoming inevitable. The galaxy's perception of humanity had undergone a fundamental shift. They were not children seeking protection, but adults who had chosen to practice restraint. Back in the medical bay, Chen finished his treatment of Thakmor and helped the Vrek's warrior to his feet. The alien moved carefully, testing his injured joints, but the damage was indeed minimal. I owe you a debt, Thakmor said formally. You could have taken my life, but instead you preserved my honor and taught me wisdom. Chen smiled, the same warm, grandfatherly expression he had worn during his diplomatic presentations. The debt is mutual, Warcast. Your challenge forced me to reveal something I had hoped to keep hidden. Your military background, the extent of it. Chen picked up his jacket and put it back on, transforming himself from a competent field medic back into a diplomat. The Council will vote on humanity's application tomorrow. After today's demonstration, I suspect the vote will be unanimous. Thakmore's mandibles clicked in what Chen recognized as thoughtful consideration. You planned this. I prepared for various possibilities, Chen corrected. Your challenge was one of several scenarios my government considered likely. The Vrex warrior studied the human with new respect. You are more than a diplomat. Much more, Chen agreed. But diplomacy is what I choose to practice now. Violence is a tool, not a way of life. They walked together through the station corridors, drawing stares from other beings. The sight of the Vrex warrior and human diplomat moving as equals sent its own message through the diplomatic community. Tell me about the Devourers, Thakmore said as they reached the main concourse. The reports I read were incomplete. Chen paused at an observation window that looked out into deep space. Starlight reflected off his face as he considered the question. They were everything you have heard and worse, he said finally. Absolutely ruthless, perfectly adapted for conquest and completely without mercy. They had consumed 17 civilizations before reaching human space. But you stopped them. We did more than stop them. Chen's reflection in the window seemed to age as he spoke. We hunted them across 40 star systems. We followed them into the deep void between galaxies. We made sure that not a single devourer entity survived to threaten another species. Thakmore felt a chill run through his exoskeleton. Complete extinction. Complete extinction, Chen confirmed. It took 37 years, but we finished the job. The council vote took place the following morning. Ambassador Chen stood before the assembly in the same diplomatic uniform he had worn during his first presentation, showing no signs of his activities in the hydroponics bay. Honored delegates, he began, I appear before you again to request humanity's admission to the Galactic Council. Recent events may have raised questions about my species' true nature. I hope to address those concerns today. Elder Voss floated above the assembly, his crystalline housing reflecting the chamber lights. Ambassador Chen, the Council has reviewed extensive intelligence regarding humanity's recent history. We would appreciate your perspective on these findings. Chen nodded calmly. Humanity has indeed fought a war, as you have discovered. We faced an enemy that threatened not only our species, but potentially every civilization in the galaxy. We chose to eliminate that threat permanently. Through methods that many species would consider excessive, observed the Sector representative. Through methods that were effective, Chen replied. We did not have the luxury of fighting a limited war against an enemy that recognized no limits. Travash leaned forward in her seat. And now that this threat is eliminated, what are humanity's intentions regarding other species? Chen's answer came without hesitation. Peace, trade, cooperation, and mutual defense. We seek to contribute to galactic civilization, not dominate it. But you retain the capability for total warfare, pressed the Nethri delegate. We retain many capabilities we choose not to use, Chen said. The ability to destroy does not create an obligation to do so. The vote when it came was indeed unanimous. Humanity was accepted into the Galactic Council with full membership and all associated rights and responsibilities. As the session concluded, Chen gathered his papers and prepared to leave. Elder Voss's mental voice reached him privately. Ambassador, the Council would be interested in discussing humanity's role in galactic defense. Your species' capabilities could be valuable in maintaining peace. Chen looked up at the floating crystal. We would be honored to serve as peacekeepers, Elder Voss. Humans have learned that the best way to prevent war is to be very, very good at fighting it. The transmission ended, and Chen walked from the chamber. Behind him, delegates from dozens of species watched him go, each one newly aware that they had just witnessed something unprecedented. A species that had mastered violence so completely that they found diplomacy more interesting. In his quarters that evening, Chen composed his report to Earth. The message was brief and to the point. Mission accomplished. Council membership secured. Recommend immediate deployment of additional diplomatic teams to key sectors. All personnel should be drawn from Reaper Division veterans as discussed. The galaxy is ready to learn what human peace really means. He sealed the transmission and looked out at the stars. Somewhere among them, other species were discovering that humanity's greatest strength was not their ability to make war, but their choice to make peace instead. It was, Chen reflected, a much more terrifying prospect for potential enemies. The war was over. The diplomacy was just beginning, and Ambassador Marcus Chen, former Reaper Division operative, current instrument of human peace, smiled as he prepared for tomorrow's negotiations. Death, it turned out, made an excellent diplomat.